Resident Evil 5 took the franchise and said, "Get lost, we're an action series now," which upset many fans. But was it really that bad? From zombie hordes to parasitic nightmares, Resident Evil 5 put a whole new spin on survival horror, leaning hard into co-op gameplay and blockbuster style action. But that shift came with some controversy, not just because of the tone, but because of the setting as well. Behind all the action and over-the-top moments is a game that redefined Resident Evil, for better or for worse. So, is it a bold evolution or a misstep in the series? I'm Joe, an ex-gaming industry pro, and today we're revisiting Resident Evil 5, the co-op focused sequel that traded scares for spectacle. Resident Evil 5, released in 2009 and developed by Capcom, is the direct sequel to the critically acclaimed Resident Evil 4. But instead of one-upping RE4's tense atmospheric horror, RE5 went full Hollywood action. Set in Africa, the game pits Chris Redfield and his new partner Sheva against an outbreak of the parasitic Plagas virus. It's the first fully co-op Resident Evil, which should have brought it to greater heights, but it's possibly one of the most controversial entries in the entire series, not including the movies of course. We'll get to the controversy later. For now, the game. Resident Evil 5 is a third-person shooter that builds on the framework of RE4. You'll still be managing limited resources, upgrading weapons and facing down waves of infected enemies, but unlike Leon's solo adventure, this game doubles down on teamwork. The story here is peak Resident Evil cheese. Chris is on a mission to stop bioterrorism and track down his long-lost partner Jill Valentine, while facing off against his arch-nemesis Albert Wesker. The game goes all in on melodrama and larger-than-life moments, from Wesker's superhuman antics to Chris literally punching a boulder to save the day. It's all over the top, for better or for worse. I'd played RE5 before, ages ago on the 360, so when I started playing Resident Evil 5 for this video, I knew roughly what to expect. From the start, there's elements of horror, and I was confused as I had remembered it being all action, and then there's an ambush of sheer chaos, which reminded me this game is an action flick, not a thriller. I admit, I did have fun though. I played alone, willingly I add to protect my reputation, which allowed me to see that Resident Evil 5's co-op is both its biggest strength and its biggest weakness. Playing with a friend can be an absolute blast, with moments where coordination really pays off, but playing solo, not so good. The AI's decisions can be frustrating, from wasting ammo to running straight into a chainsaw. Now, when your partner isn't running into chainsaws, the combat itself feels pretty good, even though it leans heavily on action over survival. You're mowing down enemies more often than fearing them, which gets to a certain level where it nearly becomes parody. You're going around giving uppercuts, hooks and straights to absolute demons. When you're not fighting zombies for fun and actually aiming, the over-the-shoulder mechanic is precise, but movement is still rooted in that classic tank control-like style, which can feel awful during intense firefights. This comes true especially when it comes to some bosses. The bosses are hit or miss, mainly miss. Some, like the Ouroboros, have goals rather than just being bullet sponges, and are decent enough fights. Others, like the Bat, are just awful. It knocks you back into reality when this giant bat monster is walking slowly up to you, and not attacking you because you're slightly diagonal to it. However, the boss battles come with their moments. No one will forget the infamous boulder punching moment.
You okay? Yeah, sorry.
Which is both ridiculous and iconic in equal measure. Which brings me to Albert Wesker. This guy has one of the silliest boss fights of all time. His Matrix-style moves and constant taunting make him a better fit for Metal Gear Rising rather than this franchise. However, it makes him one of the most memorable villains in the series. Fighting this guy was a lot of fun, especially when he sprints at you out of nowhere, freaking you out. This is where people may disagree, but Wesker is a great villain. Another change this game made from RE4 is that resource management is still here but feels less vital than previous games. Ammo and health are more plentiful, and the game's linear structure means you rarely feel the same desperation as in earlier entries. That said, the weapon variety and upgrade system are satisfying, giving you plenty of ways to tackle the action, even going as far to have an infinite ammo mode you can unlock. All of this leads you to come to the conclusion that this game isn't a Resident Evil, but it's still fun as a game in its own right, and that's what matters. What is a bit less fun is that visually, Resident Evil 5 is a bit meh, but it holds up just fine considering it's 15 years old. The environments look okay, but at least there's a variety from the sun-drenched streets of Africa to a giant ship. Some of the character animations and facial expressions are also outdated. It's always the loopy eyes with these games. The sound design is alright, with satisfying weapon effects and a soundtrack that keeps the tension high at points. The voice acting is classic Resident Evil, dramatic, cheesy, and somehow perfect for the tone.
This isn't over, Chris.
While the story isn't groundbreaking, it's entertaining in its own action B-movie way. Chris and Sheva's dynamic works well, and Wesker steals the show as a villain, just such an over-the-top guy. It's a departure from the horror-driven plots of earlier games, but it delivers in terms of pure action spectacle, and there's plenty of lore for true Resident Evil fans. Now the part I didn't want to do. The action B-movie style wasn't the main controversy when this game came out. It's set in Africa, which is fine by itself, but the E3 trailer and the depiction of Africa in the first few levels really upset some people. I'm just a fella on the internet. I'm not going to tell you whether this was or was not something. All you need to know is it brought a lot of negative attention on the game. So, was Resident Evil 5 really that bad? It depends. As a Resident Evil, maybe. It's saved by the fact that Resident Evil 6 exists as well. That is a tongue twister, wow. But if you're up for an action-packed co-op experience with some classic Resident Evil flair, it's worth revisiting. Resident Evil 5 isn't perfect, but it's undeniably fun. It may not redefine the series, but it's a wild ride that's still worth taking, especially with a friend. The Gold Edition that I played also comes with all the DLC that I didn't cover in this video, giving you so much more to play and experience. If you enjoyed this review and want to see more cheesy action, hit that like button and subscribe. As always, have a good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, whenever you are, and next week, we're taking on Christmas in a holiday special across 2 parts. See you then.